Hello again. Hello, everyone. And today is day 25 of my 30-day IG Live challenge. And I thought that for today, I would just like to give a brief sharing on something that I've observed a lot. And I've always wondered why it is that it isn't talked about more, or there isn't more awareness around this question. So what is today's topic? Okay, so I want to talk about why we can't really discern our mission or our vocation without healing first. We can't properly discern our mission and vocation without healing. So in the circles that I'm in, and I think a lot of you who follow my content are in, it is quite common and desirable for people to want to say, I want to discern, what my mission is or what my vocation is. That this may include discerning state of life vocation, discerning, for example, am I called to marriage, or discerning if this person is the person that I should marry, or maybe discerning religious life, whether I'm meant to enter religious life, or discerning if I should, maybe become a priest, for example, right? So that's state of life vocation. But there's also personal vocation, and we see this come up when people express their desire to know what did God create them for, what is like that special work that maybe they are best equipped to do to serve in the world. We all long for meaning and purpose, and a big part of this desire for meaning and purpose manifests itself in us longing to know what is our mission. Right? So a smaller subset of that longing to know mission is the desire for us to know our gifts or to know our personality, right? We take different kinds of assessments, different kinds of tests to tell us maybe what our strengths are, what our personality is, how we function in relation to other people. So we like to do that. In fact, I think it's very common for people to do a lot of those free online tests that are now available, right? To figure out so for example, a big one will be Myers-Briggs, and it's actually one of the instruments that I actually use. I'm actually trained and certified to use with my clients. But I find there's actually so much going on, even outside of just doing all these tests on, personality or motivation that actually impacts even the accuracy of these assessments. Most people don't know that. So I'm here to tell you that I'm here to share this information, right? So if you're someone who has been wondering and wanting to know, more about yourself and trying to discern maybe your vocation, your mission, and you are in the process of that, maybe going for retreats and taking assessments and tests to figure out your personality, etc. So I'm here to tell you that there are factors that affect the accuracy of this test that would then affect in terms of the accuracy of the data that you have when you're praying about and discerning about where God may be calling you, all right? And I guess there are many things that affect, but today I want to talk about our background, the trauma that may have happened in our life. So this is something that I see happen again and again in my clients, okay? In the clients that I actually take through my signature program, which is a longer, deeper process for people who are really getting very serious about wanting to figure out who they are. So a lot of times these are people who they're not really young. They're maybe in their 30s, 40s, or 50s, and they've spent a lot of money on their education. They've already maybe been working for a long time. And even though they've worked for a long time, they may have risen up the ladder in the corporate world or wherever they are. They still don't know who they are, and they're still trying to figure out what is my mission in life, right? So it's one thing to ask that question when you're in your teens or in your 20s, but by the time you're in your 30s, 40s, 50s, you find that you're still asking that question. There is a sense of urgency, right? So this process that I bring my clients through, often what we find and what they discover is when they haven't healed from certain traumatic experiences. When by traumatic, I mean, there's a wide spectrum, okay? But let's say a child that was very neglected and had to learn to parent herself, had to learn to take care of the daily the daily, bread and butter kind of things, they have to be routine, find food to be on the table. This can often happen. We call this parentification, right? When, let's say, maybe the parents are, one or both parents were either mentally ill or physically ill, was not able to be there for the child. So there are survival skills that we pick up because of, let's say, the circumstances. And you learn to be and operate in a certain way in the world. And maybe you've overcome these difficult situations in your childhood. I actually have clients, multiple, that have similar kind of stories where, they've managed to do well. They are very highly functioning. But because of the environment that they had in their younger days, in their childhood, in their youth, there's a certain conditioning and scripts that has allowed them to survive. Now they are lost about who am I really, right? And when they take these tests, like for example the Myers-Briggs or the motivation code, which is another instrument that I use, a lot of times what the instrument picks up is what they've learned to do, what they've learned to, how they've learned to operate in order to survive. Okay, it may not actually be picking up their real natural self, their real natural motivation, and their real natural, cognitive preference or the temperament or the personality. Why? So why does this matter? It matters because when we are operating out of our scripts and our learned behavior, even if we become very, very skilled at it and we can do it well, we are not necessarily free. We're not really acting from a place of freedom. Okay, there's often a lot of compulsion involved. The way that we operate in the world is often matched with certain subconscious narratives, like this is what it means to be a good person. This is what it means to be a loving person, right? So I have to be, for example, really organized, really scheduled, to be responsible, because that's how I learned to survive. And this has become part of my identity. I take pride in being very scheduled, very organized, knowing how to anticipate all possible scenarios. I'm always prepared, for example. Now, speaking now in Myers-Briggs terms, okay, some of you may know in terms of the 4 letters, at the very last letter, there's either a P or a J. And that's how we deal with the outside world. And it tends to be the Js, those who have a J at the end, that are very scheduled, very methodical, very well planned in advance in time. And they don't like changes to plans, right? But they are very trustworthy when it comes to, let's say, planning events and stuff like that, because they make sure everything falls in place. The Ps, on the other hand, are known for spontaneity, adaptability, being more emergent. They're okay with jumping into something without a plan because they are confident that as they do it, the plan will kind of like unveil and reveal itself. This is a real thing. It's a different way of being in the world, okay? And neither is better than the other. But sometimes, so for example, someone who is actually by nature a P, so I'm actually one of such a person, but I was trained from young to operate as a J, to be very methodical, very scheduled, very well planned, and I was rewarded and affirmed for it. So I did well because of that. And I still appreciate picking up those skills. But when you keep using what is actually not your natural preference and what you're, kind of like you're not aligned with the design that was given to you, it tends to take up a lot more energy. It drains you. You're not as effective in it. Okay, so you can do it. You can train yourself to do it even well, but it's so arduous, and you're not actually leaning into the strength that actually was given to you naturally as yours. But when we haven't healed, we haven't integrated, we haven't healed from, let's say, our past traumas, we can't help but lean into what we've picked up that helped us survive or helped us to get the approval and the love that we needed. We will be afraid to let go of that way of operating, which means if I'm still not really aware of who I truly am, like what my real natural preference is, what makes me the most happy, the most free, what I can do effortlessly with more ease, because I'm really stuck with this need to be a certain way, I'm stuck with the person I should be, then I can't really discover who I really am. I need healing, a process of healing, to begin to be able to see myself as I really am, and then to embrace myself as I really am. So that's another thing that often comes up with some of my clients, not with everyone, with some of them. As things emerge about who they really are, they find that they have a difficult time accepting it. They can't deny that it's true about them, but there's something in them that goes, why is this me? And I always invite them to be curious when there's such a response. Where's that response coming from? That you are uncomfortable or don't like what you're seeing about yourself. And when we sit with that, or when they sit with that, often it emerges. It's part of the conditioning that they've had, right? It goes against what has been valued, maybe in their families, in their environments. Maybe it is the opposite of what has helped them to survive. So it's almost like instinctively they belittle or distrust that those traits that are actually theirs, that God has given them, because they've come to believe they have to be something else in order to succeed or to do well. Now, when we're still in that state, and a lot of this happens without our awareness, until we have cultivated deeper self-awareness, right? We won't be aware that this is happening. Imagine trying to discern big questions like, what is my mission, Lord? Or, like, who am I called to marriage, or am I called to the priesthood or religious life? Which order am I called to discern with? Am I called to, or which person am I marrying? Should I be marrying? Is it this person? When we're still operating in blindness, so to speak, we can make these decisions. I'm not saying that we can't at all, and we often do. But the truth is that a lot of times we don't really go in with the full set of data, right? And that's what happens in life. A lot of times we make sometimes permanent decisions based on faulty information. But part of life is also then dealing with the consequences of that afterwards, right? And healing can still happen afterwards. Life is not so rigid. God is not so rigid. But I'm just sharing that, wherever we are at this point in our life, when we begin to really want to seriously ask, what is the work of my life? Or where am I meant to be so that I can contribute at the highest for the God's kingdom? And this is especially an urgent question I find for people, like I said, in midlife. I have one client, it was so special to me when he said he's 50 this year, and he's really excited about doing this work this year with me, because he said if he lives to be 75, he says, for the next 25 years of my life, I will have so much more clarity. I can go where I know I was created to go, Not necessarily at one place, but you finally know how to discern and align, because you have something concrete to discern with, and not just abstract principles and ideas. But the process that we need to go through is not just a process of understanding, right? Like I said, even going for different tests and all that is not necessarily going to help you unless you have more self-awareness, and unless you have become more free to see yourself and accept yourself as you are. Okay, yes, I see that comment there. Erica, as someone who has consistently identified as a J, the idea of being a natural P is terrifying. I don't know whether you're saying that about me because I shared that, but yes, if you were talking about, it is terrifying. I really didn't want it to be true. There's a part of me that freaked out that I could be a P, because subconsciously I think I've always prided myself in being very together. Not that I'm not, okay, but I think the real me is a lot more spontaneous and abstract and creative, but it took me a long process to embrace that about myself. So first to accept it, and then to actually embrace it, and then to love it about myself, that took a few years. That took a few years, right? But it was only when I did and I could, then I was ready for God to reveal to me more about the vocation, the personal vocation that He actually has given me. Because if any part of me is still rejecting unconsciously the design that He has given me, then I'm not really truly open, not able to surrender or trust what my mission might be, right? So it's so funny that I think a lot of Christians, a lot of Catholics we say we want to know our mission. I mean, there's a part of us that feels like we want to know our purpose, we want to know, have meaning, we want to know our mission, we want to discern, right? Like where God is leading us. But at the same time, we are not willing to see ourselves as we really are, as God has created us. We are not ready to do the interior journey, to do the interior work of healing, right? So when that happens, it's like there's this contradiction, and we don't even realize it. And it's hard sometimes to explain this or say this to someone. Sometimes I know people who are, intentionally trying to discern, for example, like as a state of life. Am I called to the priesthood? Am I called to religious life? Or they're trying to figure out, a change in career path, maybe at midlife. They know that what they have up to now, for example, isn't working, but they're still going blind into trying something different, Or they discern, a young person may be discerning, with one order and another religious order, and nothing seems to really fit. And they have some sense of what to look for. And of course, they may have people, formators or spiritual directors that are discerning with them. But sometimes I also wonder, even within those systems where we are helping people discern, we're co-discerning with people, how much awareness is there about trauma, about the impact of trauma on the actual personality and temperament and the way a person operates, on how significant compulsions are. So when we're not free to be ourselves, we don't know who we really are. And if we're discerning with a partner, whether it's for marriage or let's say religious life or whatnot kind of thing, they can't see the real us either. How do we co-discern? It's hard, right? It's hard. So all that aside, no matter where we may be at this point in our life, it's never too late to refine, right? That question, so Lord, who am I, and who have you created me to be, and where are you calling me? And for anyone who sincerely wants to know the answer to that question, I guess I'm trying to say, you have to do the inner work of healing. It's a process. It's not an option, because if you don't do that work, you will always be struggling and feeling like you don't quite know who you are and you don't quite know where God is leading you because you're not free. Okay, yes. So Erica adds, yes, especially when we have built up so much comfort in our own identities and the boxes that have developed mainly out of survival. Absolutely, absolutely. So I was just talking to a client. I just did a Myers-Briggs debrief, and she was torn between two types, right? And she was so confused because the type that came out from the online assessment, she said, like, this describes me to a T. Right. And actually I was thinking to myself, yes, it does. It describes you as you have become, you as you have learned to operate to a T. And the other one, which actually is what she hypothesized that she was herself, it's also true of her. So she was kind of confused. So we had this conversation because she's actually in the process right now of, healing and all that. And I told her, we don't need to force a decision now, right? There's awareness, right, that this could be the you that has allowed you to survive, and it is good. But it is tiring to keep operating in a way that you were not naturally designed, gifted to operate. You can, right? But then you wonder, why is it that I'm not joyful? Why is it that I don't feel like myself? Well, because you're not operating the way that actually you're designed to. So slowly, what I told her was, as she continues to heal and integrate, and she's also starting to do inner child healing work, is that you may begin to recognize, it's really a sense of recognition. Oh, this is actually how I really am, right? When I'm not trying to have to be a certain way, when I feel more safe, when I don't have to be the adult, for example, in the room, this is actually me. And I said the difference. You see, even with our backgrounds, with our trauma and our wounds, there is a blessing. Okay, nothing is wasted. So, for example, if just talking about my example now, I grew up being trained very strongly to be a J, to be very organized, systematic. When I discovered I was a P and I relaxed into it, that was when my husband told me I was a lot more fun to be with, because actually I'm actually a lot more fun-loving than I ever allowed myself to be, right? And when you have to keep operating out of your non-preference, it takes a lot of effort. So it's hard to be fun and have fun when you keep having to, when you're having to have a lot of concentration all the time and operate out of your natural preference, right? I lost my train of thought. What was I talking about? Why was I saying this about the J and the P? Erica, can you remind me? You've been listening. What was I talking about? Okay, I'm just going to answer this question first that you sent in. Question about temperament. I have always heard that we can't really change our temperament after our 20s. Do you agree, or can it be hidden? Okay, Okay, I'm going to answer this question first. Thank you for telling me what I was talking about. Okay, there are different schools of thought. Okay, the one that I align with, let's say in both Motivation Code and Myers-Briggs, what they presuppose, the theory, is that actually our natural motivational design, our natural temperament is actually fixed. The natural temperament is fixed, okay? The preference is fixed. But that doesn't mean that the expressions of that doesn't change. So it's very different, right? There's the design, and then there's the way that it's expressed. Those are two very different things. The expression can change over time, and the expression can be affected by many things, including trauma, including healing. When you begin to heal from your trauma and all that kind of thing, the expression of it would change. But the presupposition with both of these is that the innate, natural, given design doesn't change, right? But at different stages in life, different states of development, when you're in crisis or in midlife, there are things that change. So there's actually a lot of depth to at least to the instruments that I choose to use, so that because I want tools that can help my clients develop in-depth self-understanding. Okay, it's not just a cursory, I'm like this and this is what it means. It's really about how to build that relationship and deepen that relationship with ourselves. Okay, so what I was talking about before I lost my train of thought was I was talking about how we have formed certain patterns out of survival because of trauma. Yes, okay. So I was going to say there's a gift in that, even in the trauma. So I learned how to function as a J, right? What happened after I began to heal, and when I've gone through more healing, and I realized I was a P in the Myers-Briggs, and I embraced that, I became a P. I'm an ENFP that has also, in a sense, developed to quite a high degree how to operate as a J. But the difference now is being more healed and more integrated. I am free. I don't feel a compulsion to use the preference of J, like being organized and systematic. But when I need to use it, I can use it, right? And I've developed it over the years. So in a sense, I'm thankful that I've honed that, so that like even doing the work that I need to do now, I'm doing a lot of things on my own. There's a lot of planning and systems kind of stuff behind the scenes. If I hadn't developed my non-preferred function in this sense, usually Ps find it very easy to start things, but they are very weak on following through. Okay, so Js are better at following through. So I need to draw on my non-preferred functions in the Myers-Briggs sense to do what I need to do. And that's when it tires me more, is when it drains me more. But I can freely choose to use it when I need to use it, and I can let go of it and not use it when I don't have to use it. And I know how to give myself rest and break after having to use my non-preferred function. All of this would not have been possible before healing, because I would just have been acting out of my script and out of my compulsions. Yeah. So we can't really see ourselves clearly and lead ourselves properly until we have begun healing. So I just want to end off. So today's show is kind of like a short because I have a lunch appointment. But there's a post that I made previously, and it's in my IG feed. And I think there's also a video I made on this, and it's one of my pinned videos. And I talk about the 4 different layers of self-knowledge. Okay, I invite you, if you're interested in what we're talking about, to go and look at that, because to really understand ourselves, which is necessary in order for us to discern our mission, discern our vocation, we need to know ourselves intellectually. That's kind of like the about knowledge. We need to know ourselves experientially. We need to be able to effectively know ourselves. That actually includes attuning to ourselves, being with ourselves, holding attuning to our emotions. See, it's different from just intellectually knowing things about ourselves. I need to know how to accompany and attune to myself. And then the deepest layer of self-knowledge, I call it unitive knowledge. This is where really the integration happens together with the spiritual, where the different parts of me come together. I need to be able to attune to myself before that can happen, right? I need to learn things about myself, understand things about myself intellectually, be attentive to my experiences of myself, how I experience the world, what actually is comfortable for me, what's uncomfortable, where is it that I really do things effortlessly and where I really struggle experientially, right? And attune to how I feel about all that. And then slowly things come together and I lead myself. I learn to lead myself, and I'm not just a victim of my past. I'm not held prisoner by my compulsions and my scripts. I become more free. And then as these layers of self-knowledge deepen, I become much more able to discern not just, like who I am, who I'm not, but also where God is calling me. And I also become more free to go where He is calling me. Okay, so that's the sharing for today. I hope it gives you something to think about. Thank you so much, Erica, for your questions and helping me catch my train of thought again. And if there's anything else that came up from this sharing, please feel free to send me a message, okay, and ask me the question, and I will revert at some point at some later life. Thank you. Bye.